Welcome to this special interview brought to you by Breedwise. I'm your host, Sasha Whitaker. For those of you in the UK, the cold, wet start and sudden increase of temperature to a heat wave will not have gone unnoticed. I'm truly thankful that a wonderful, skilled and dedicated vet, Giulia Rapezzano from Pool House Equine Hospital, has kindly agreed to explain the crucial topic of foal temperature regulation in hot weather. If you want to know why foals differ from adult horses in the heat and learn practical advice on how to ensure the well-being of young horses during hot spells, stay tuned. Giulia, welcome to Breedwise.
Thank you very much, Sasha. It's nice to having the chance to speak a little bit about foals, which are one of my favorite topics.
Fantastic. Can you just explain to us why foals are more vulnerable to temperature fluctuations than adult horses?
So it's a bit the same for all neonates, really. So they're generally more sensitive to higher temperatures. And this is because their temperature regulation mechanisms and some physiological functions are still developing over the few weeks from foaling. So when the heat load is too great, this basically overcomes their mechanisms of thermoregulation, and they become hyperthermic, basically. So without going into big details, these are the reasons why they're still developing equines. So that's the main reason.
And what are some of the common symptoms that a foal might be struggling in the heat?
So maybe we can talk later about specific signs of stress, like heat stress or severe heat shock. But generally, a foal that is not well, you might have gone and check your foal, you might see that there is something wrong. The response that they give is kind of very similar for many conditions. Increased temperature is one of these. So they normally become a bit more dull, and the main clinical signs is that when they are in discomfort, they stop nursing. So the urine production decreases. Generally in foals, you should see a very frequent urination. And another sign of lack of proper drinking, it might be that your mare has got a full udder that is leaking. So these are two, they're not extremely specific to increased temperature, but are definitely the most common signs in a foal that is somehow, in a foal that has got something wrong, let's say. So these are the primary signs that you see before going into details with what happens in case of heat stress, really.
So really you should be able to pick this up on your general checks, and it's really a symptom, a sign that there's something wrong, and at that point it really could be one of many things, couldn't it? But if you know that
Yes.
there's something going on, you can then start to look a little bit deeper into the problem.
Yes, exactly. Foals are a little bit different from adults. They can go downhill very quickly. In particular, when we're talking about neonates, I know that we're talking about foals in general. So definitely older foals from 2-3 weeks onwards are a bit more resistant to, in general, diseases and increased temperatures, let's say. It's very simplistic, but it's backed up also by literature and studies. But when they are neonates, they're quite susceptible, and changes are very subtle sometimes. So definitely practicing, observation of your foal. It's very important in order to pick up even little things that might make a difference. At the same time, of course, we don't have to go on the opposite side of the spectrum where we, freak out for any little thing. But definitely a foal that is not drinking, is not bright, is a little bit duller than normal, lies down more frequently, goes to the other and doesn't properly latch and actively latch. These are generally signs that there is something wrong somehow. And it might be because of temperature. Now, of course, we're talking about increases of temperature that can be due partially because of increased ambient temperature, but they can also be a symptom of fever, which is, again, a symptom of something else. It's generally a symptom of another disease.
So you've mentioned temperature quite a bit. Can you tell us what the normal temperature range is for a foal, please?
So if you read on the books, the normal temperature range is like the maximum temperature that they should have is 39 degrees. There is a bit of variation, but from 37 to 39, I would say that is within the normal limits. It really depends on the season, because temperature that are more towards the mid-upper range of the 38s might be fine if it's very hot outside. But also in foals, it's also important to evaluate trends, really. So, for example, a foal that has got a consistently high, let's say, not high, but a higher temperature, so towards the 39, whilst the previous day was 37 and he's always had 37, it might be the symptom of something that is developing, whether it is because of the temperatures outside or whether it is because of a disease, which they're very prone to.
So you're talking really about what we would expect in good husbandry, where we are checking the foal's temperature regularly, so we know when there is a change in it, or if there's a change in it.
Yes, so that's what we do in the hospital, in a normal hospital. That's what, I mean, not only us, but a bit everywhere. So we do frequent checks because things can change quickly. So if there is a suspicion of a disease, or if the foal is monitored for any other reasons, normally you do frequent checks so that you can also observe trends. So, for example, if your foal, just use another parameter, but if your foal always had a heart rate of 80, and all of a sudden there is a heart rate of 120, it might be because of excitement, fear, but it might also might be monitored. For example, it might be dehydrated, hypovolemic, or it can have other issues. So yes, definitely. I know it's really hard when it's the first foal, because but you have to start somewhere, and experience comes from doing things repeatedly, always the same, and observing your horses always and constantly. So it's the same when you have a foal. I understand that it's a little bit hard when it's the first one. Yeah.
I love that bit of advice, because with so many things, when you know your normal parameters, it's very easy to see a change. If you're just guessing at your normal parameters, then it's much more difficult. Going back to heat and the heat wave that we're in at the moment, can you tell me what sort of heat you would expect maybe an older foal or a neonate to be start to struggle at?
So I think it's a very difficult question. I've done a little bit of research on that, because I wasn't sure really if there was a specific temperature that was, dangerous in general. I would say that generally speaking, the risk of heat stress in the UK is quite low, because temperatures tend not to be above 35 degrees. I've checked how much the temperature was in central UK over the past few years, and there have been some peaks, but they were not, as other countries, I don't know, Mediterranean, Australia, for example, where you have these very high temperatures consistently. I think that the main factors to be considered are continuous exposure. So, you can still have issues if, the temperature is not as high, like thermometer wise, but if the foal is kept without shelter, or in a normal, paddock with no trees, for example, for longer periods of time. Or of course, clearly, if it's too hot for you, it might be too hot for a neonate, definitely. Like if you stay 10 minutes and your head starts to burn and your brain is getting cooked, then maybe that's not the best environment for a neonatal foal to be in. I would say that from 3 weeks onwards, they're a little bit more resistant to that. And at that stage, really the risks of, I talk about dehydration, but it's really hypovolemia, but these are technicalities again. So the risk of becoming dehydrated are lower. So I think that, for example, leaving them for longer periods of time unattended might be acceptable, let's say, as long as there is shelter. So I wouldn't say that there is I cannot really pinpoint a specific temperature. So I would really use common sense and, making sure that if it's too hot for you, you maybe don't turn them out, or maybe you reduce the time, just maybe half an hour in the morning.
So from what I hear, you're saying that the risk of heat stress and heat shock for most foals in the UK is very low.
Well, I wouldn't be so sure in saying very, very low, but definitely it's lower than many other countries. The risks are higher, for example, in horses that are competing or under stress, that sweat a lot. I don't know, endurance horses, so the risk is higher for those categories rather than for foals. But of course, if you have a newborn or a 2 weeks old foal, I would still be careful. And, it's always better to be safe than sorry, clearly. But yeah, I would say that it's not extremely high at this stage, at least. It's not particularly reported in the UK.
So you spoke a little bit there about maybe reducing turnout. What are the best ways to help keep your foal as comfortable and reduce the risks as much as possible for them with regards to heat?
So well, definitely provide shelter. Sometimes even in shelters, temperatures can be a bit hotter. So providing shelter, making sure that the mare is provided with loads of water, because we know that foals have got a liquid diet. So, making sure that the mom has got enough water is definitely important as well. I would say that turning out in the earliest hours of the day, and after, I don't know, at this stage, I would say after 6-7 p.m. would be a good idea. Even turn out overnight if it's possible. It's another good idea if you need to keep them out for longer periods. I would say maybe not to leave them unsupervised for long periods of time. That's definitely important. If you keep them in a stable, making sure that the ventilation is at its best. The structures might be old, etc. But if you have another window, maybe open an old window that was closed so that there is a little bit of breeze. And if you can't do that, in some stables in our practice, when it's hot, we use fans, for example, which are very well tolerated generally. You just put it in a corner, and you can even put 2 in case of the ventilation in the stable is not really good. So these are the main things that I would do to ensure that. And of course, if you choose a paddock where maybe there are trees that provide, in any case, better shade than a shelter with a black top, like sometimes it happens.
you. That's a lot of really good advice there. If an owner had a foal and they thought that perhaps it wasn't coping very well in the heat, the temperature was raised, it hadn't been drinking, as you said correctly, the mare's udder was full and dripping, and the foal was sweaty and lethargic, at what point would you suggest that they called their vet? And what are the best ways to help cool that foal?
So, in general, a foal that is not nursing, it's considered always as an emergency, I would say, because they having this, at least they start nibbling on solid food from week 1, but in any case, for the first month of their life, the diet is predominantly liquid. So they rely on nursing appropriately to maintain their hydration status and their caloric intake and energy requirements, really. So a foal that is not nursing, definitely, I would at least call the vet as a phone call, and generally that requires a call out. Now, generally, there are some more extreme symptoms and more, let's say, moderate ones. Definitely, the vet has to be called if, for example, something that happens not infrequently is that a pregnant mare is left unsupervised at term in a field. She falls down, even if it's like a normal summer day, the foal might struggle a little bit to stand up, becomes dehydrated very quickly because it's not nursing properly. So it becomes hypovolemic very quickly. So that's an example where actually being born in the summer on direct heat can be a life-threatening issue. Definitely if they are extremely sweaty, flared up nostrils, breathing very fast, like shallow breathing. Sometimes when it's really bad, they can breathe with the mouth open. Definitely having an increased temperature, very agitated or stressed, very sweaty. Sometimes they collapse. All these things together would require a call out, an emergency call out. At the same time, I would make sure that there is actually a clinical problem, because of course sometimes they can be with flared up nostrils because of other reasons, fear, etc. They can sweat quite a lot, to be fair, still coping well. So as long as the foal is bright, alert, when you go there, it stands up, goes to the mom, like interacts with you, the demeanor is normal, then at that stage I would maybe hold on and see. So it's a bit of a balance. I wouldn't definitely call the vet just because the foal is breathing a bit faster. I would maybe make him stand and see what he does, if he nurses or not. So there are ways to test if something that might look like an abnormality, it is really not. In regards on what you should do, so if there is a concern, I would definitely speak with your vet, even just as a phone call for advice. Generally, bringing them into a cooler environment is always better. Even if they're in the shade and looking distressed, you might take them. Sometimes stables are cooler in general than fields. So I would definitely take them into in a cooler environment if possible. And sometimes you can either hose the extremities, hose the neck, in particular because there are big veins in there. The extremities as well might be quite hot, so it's better than just hosing him on the head or with very cold water. So I would use the cold water for the extremities and then maybe ambient temperature for the rest. You can use some towels, for example, with water in severe cases, but we're talking in these cases about fever for other reasons, or like proper heat shock. We might use alcohol, but it's something that normally vets do to try to cool them down. I would maybe discuss with your vet first describing the symptoms that you see, because of course it will be easier for them to give proper advice once you describe the symptoms, really.
Very good. Lots of good advice there. Can you just talk to us about maybe some of the misconceptions that people have about foals and heat that you come across regularly?
So funnily enough, I think that the main misconception is, well, it's not really a misconception, it's more of a fear of turning them out unsupervised overnight, which is something that, I mean, understandably, owners might be a bit scared about, but I would say that if your stable is very hot during the day, if your paddocks and shelter are very hot during the day, a good solution might be to turn them out overnight. And it can be done gradually. I mean, if you leave your foal unsupervised during the day, it would be kind of the same leaving them unsupervised overnight, as long as it's done gradually. So, and many owners do this in general, but I know that is something that sometimes might be difficult for some owners. So I think that the compromise would be to do it gradually or to do it partially. For example, you turn them out very early in the morning. Some people wake up at 4 a.m. So that would be a solution, and bringing them in afterwards. But yeah, definitely the misconceptions are more on the other side of the spectrum, so cold temperatures, where we feel like we have to cover them like a lot, and instead that it's almost never the case.
You've given us a lot of really good advice there. I wonder, could you just sum it up into some of your top tips for foal care during hot weather?
So definitely for me, number one is monitoring, really. Like, you know your foal, you've had him since he was I would say a baby, but yeah, depending on
pre-baby.
A pre-baby sometimes. So definitely there are some attitude patterns that you should be able to pick up quite quickly, and monitoring, at least for the first weeks, has to be attentive, because foals are very cheeky sometimes, and they can become issues might develop really quickly. So being able to pick up subtle clinical signs is important. So I would try to practice that. Definitely turn out in the best moments of the day. Definitely, unless it's 40 degrees, half an hour out in a hotter temperature, shouldn't be a problem if the foal is healthy, if there is a shelter. So I think that up to 30-35 degrees is something that can be done as normal, as long as they're provided with some shade, and with mom is provided with drinks, and they are monitored. Definitely using fans sometimes, just it's a very easy solution, fairly cheap, and in the hottest days of the summer, it can really make the difference. So this would be the main three tips that I would have. And also, if you're concerned, checking the temperature, but it's really a trend.
Your normal monitoring, isn't it? Checking the temperature.
It is indeed. Well, generally, foals coming here, and the reason why we check temperatures is because normally there is a disease rather than an effect of the ambient temperature. So we do that for, let's say, unfortunately, different reasons that are more concerning. But also, for example, I would not panic if your foal has been out, has got 39, I don't know, 1 of temperature. You bring him in, and then he's consistently lowering down, for example. If it's just the one time, it might just be the fact that it's really hot, but of course it has to be hot outside. That might be a reason. And as long as it comes down, that would be fine. And in any case, if you have any doubts, you call your vet and you describe the symptoms on what you think that it's abnormal. And generally you receive advice based, like tailored on the situation, which is the best thing that should be done.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And I think my top tip for this is have a good relationship with your vet. We need you all on our side, and obviously you've really given me that today, Giulia, as you've been my stud vet as well, and I really appreciate your time today. So thank you very much, and I hope that helps a lot of our breeders not worry so much through this warm weather. And we will hopefully speak to you again on Breedwise. Thank you.
Thank you.